Now, part 4 of the state capture report has officially been handed to President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the findings place the spotlight mostly on Eskom. The report finding that Eskom entered into irregular contracts worth almost 15 billion rand, mainly with entities linked to members of the Gupta family, who were former President Jacob Zuma's friends. The report recommends that prosecutors consider filing criminal charges against former Eskom CEOs Molefe and Matshela, Koko, ex-Chief Financial Officer Anoj Singh, and some members of its 2014 board. Let's get you some analysis on this. We're joined by energy expert Professor Sampson Mamphweli via our video link this morning. Prof, it's great to have you with us on the program. And I suppose good to see what so many experts have described as the plunder of Eskom over the past decade or so, contained in the state capture inquiry report. I just want to kick off our interview by reading one of this excerpt from the report. It says, the evidence proves a scheme by the Guptas to capture Eskom, install the Guptas' selected officials in strategic positions within Eskom as members of the board, the committees of the board and the executives, and then to divert Eskom's assets to the Guptas' financial advantage. And of course, Prof, we're all paying the price to this day.
Good morning, Michelle and the viewers. Yes, I've been going through parts of the report and some of the recommendations. And the question that I'm asking myself is, why are these people still walking in our streets? I mean, some of this information has been in the public domain for quite some time. You will recall that there was an SIU report some time ago that found that that declared the Tegeta contract unlawful. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a number of things that stands out for me so far from the report. One is the fact that the report is carefully considered and well written by Justice Zondo. It refers to evidence, and the evidence has been properly analyzed. So that we need to get out of the way, because there are so many people who are saying so many things, especially those implicated. And then there are about 5 issues that I've picked up in the report. One is the fact that the acquisition of Optimum by Tegeta, where Eskom had to pay 659 million upfront payment for coal, when Tegeta did not necessarily own any coal mine. So under normal circumstances, then there should be due diligence done to ensure that that particular company owns a coal mine and they will supply the coal mine. And those are some of the issues that are biting us today in terms of the performance of the Eskom system. The appointments of McKinsey and so many other companies and the consultants some of the consultants that McKinsey brought on board to do work that basically Eskom employees could still do. That tells you that this was nothing more than a money laundering scheme that the executives were busy participating in. So the biggest question for me is why are these people still working the streets? Why are they not charged by this point in time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the people that the state capture inquiry have pointed out in terms of those who must now face criminal charges are those names that we know and we associate with state capture at Eskom: Molefe, Matshela, Koko, the former Chief Financial Officer Anoj Singh, and of course members of the 2014 board. But I suppose the other question that we would be asking this morning, Prof, is what about that board in question, that particular Eskom board that we're talking about from 2014, was led by Dr. Ben Ngubane, and of course he was appointed by former Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown. So should those people also be on the list of those who must face criminal charges?
I think so. I think those people should be on the list. And, going through the report, I get a view or a feeling that there are a lot more people that should be on the list. On the side of the Guptas, I have a view that there should be other additional people who should be on the list. And I'm also of the view that and I'm happy that Eskom has established this task team that's looking at the implementation of the recommendations of the report, because I think that there are still people within the Eskom system as we speak who were part of this scheme. This scheme was a well-orchestrated scheme. Like you said in your opening statement, it involved the hiring of particular people in particular positions and the firing of people who wouldn't necessarily agree with the scheme. So I tend to believe that some of the challenges that we're experiencing at the moment are because some of the people who are part of this scheme are still within the Eskom system. And I believe that at some point they could be sabotaging the system because it doesn't really work for them, because the current Eskom management is busy with the cleanup campaign, is trying to resolve some of the issues that were left behind by this group of people.
The report also talks about meddling by former President Jacob Zuma, meddling in Eskom operations. In fact, it mentions about 150 times in 2 specific volumes on Eskom how the former president was involved in so-called meddling in the operations of Eskom. One of the things that it talks about is about board meetings that had to be postponed. One in particular that happened in 2015 because of some issue that the former president was trying to resolve at the time. But how do we read that, Prof? The meddling of the former president in the day-to-day running of the operations at Eskom?
So government as a whole is not supposed to meddle with the Eskom operations. And at the president level, it's even worse, because the president is not supposed to be anywhere near Eskom. The only person that could be closer to Eskom is the deputy president, who has got the role of looking after the running government, basically. But even the deputy president himself is not supposed to meddle with the actual operations of Eskom. The Minister of Public Enterprises, their role is simply to ensure that the board is in place, and they approve the board strategies and then step back. And all these processes are quite clear if you follow the Companies Act. So the meddling by the former president just simply confirms that this scheme was a bigger kind of a scheme that he was running together with his friends, the Guptas, and that's why we ended up where we are today. That's why I believe the former president didn't even want to appear before the State Capture Commission. He had to run around and try and find reasons not to appear, because he knew that some of these things, he was not going to be able to explain some of these things. And it's coming out clear in not only this report, also in other reports, that he was also central, basically, to state capture.
And the presence of now President Cyril Ramaphosa during this time, because 2015, that was around the time that he would have established that war room on Eskom, isn't it, Prof?
Correct. So that's why I said the deputy president could have been one person who could interfere or who could intervene, not necessarily to interfere. So if you look at the aspects around the war room, and I listened to the testimony of Mr. Koko and Mr. Molefe trying to sidetrack the interventions by the deputy president through the war room. And one could get a sense that people like Mr. Molefe had to run out of the war room because they could see where the war room was going. The war room was asking for information, and they didn't want to provide that information, because they knew that the things that we are reading today in the report were going to bite them, because that is the information that the war room would have eventually asked to find out what is really happening. And then people like Molefe had to run out of the war room. And they tried to implicate the current president in their testimony without necessarily having evidence to say that this is what he did wrong. And someone like Molefe was asked by the commission chair whether he's got evidence of any wrongdoing against the president, and he said no, he doesn't have. But after trying to sidetrack the nation into believing that the current president was wrong, actually, only to find that the current president was right. And I agree with the report that the election of Cyril Ramaphosa in 2017 to become the country's president saved Eskom, and it's not only Eskom, it's Eskom and all the SOEs and government as a whole, if I have to say that.
Yeah. Prof, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Really just scratching the surface of what the latest installment of the State Capture Inquiry report has to say. It's part 4. It talks about almost 15 billion rand of total cost of contracts at Eskom linked to the Gupta family and also benefiting the family, including Tegeta exploration and resources as well. Professor Sampson Mamphweli, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on.